Marla Maples had always lived a life that many would envy, a life filled with fame, beauty, and the kind of attention most could only dream of. Yet behind the glossy image that she presented to the world, Marla knew there was more to her story than what met the eye. She had been thrust into the limelight through her marriage to Donald Trump, and while that had brought her attention, it also came with its own set of challenges. Marla had always been an independent spirit, someone who wanted more from life than to simply be defined by who she was married to. She wanted to leave her own mark, to prove that she was more than just a famous name. As the years went by and her marriage ended, Marla found herself at a crossroads, unsure of where life would take her next. It wasn't until she received the unexpected call to join Dancing with the Stars that Marla began to realize the impact this opportunity could have on her life. Initially, she had been hesitant. It wasn't something she had ever considered before, and the pressure of being back on national television, under the scrutiny of millions, seemed daunting. But after some reflection, Marla realized that this could be her chance to rediscover herself, to challenge herself in a way that she never had before. Dancing was something that had always intrigued her, something she had dabbled in as a young woman, but she had never fully pursued it. Now in her 50s, she felt like it was time to push herself beyond her comfort zone. Marla entered the dance studio for the first time, nervous but excited. The walls of the studio were lined with mirrors, reflecting a woman who had been through much but had yet to tap into the full potential of who she could be. The idea of dancing in front of a live audience, of being judged and critiqued week after week, was terrifying. Yet, as the music started and her feet began to move, Marla felt an exhilarating sense of freedom that she hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't just about the physicality of dancing. It was about rediscovering a part of herself that had been buried beneath the pressures of her past. Marla didn't want to just be a name, a famous face. She wanted to show the world that she was still capable of growth, still capable of achieving something great, even at this stage in her life. The first few weeks of the competition were a blur. Marla's body ached as she tried to learn the intricate steps and perfect the choreography. Her partner, a seasoned professional dancer, was patient, but even he could see the struggles she was facing. At times, it felt as though the weight of the world was on her shoulders. She had spent so many years in the spotlight, but this was different. This was a challenge she had never faced before. The judges were tough and the pressure was immense. There were moments when Marla doubted herself, when she wondered if she could ever live up to the expectations she had set for herself. She wasn't a professional dancer, and it became clear that her journey would be about more than just learning the steps. It would be about learning to let go, to trust in herself, and to embrace the process, no matter the outcome. Despite the struggles, Marla pressed on. Each week she improved, and with each performance she became more and more confident. The nerves that once gripped her before stepping onto the dance floor began to dissipate. She found herself enjoying the movement, the rhythm, and the freedom that came with it. It was as if she was shedding the weight of her past, letting go of the doubts that had once held her back. With every twirl, every leap, and every graceful step, Marla was reconnecting with herself in a way she never expected. The audience began to take notice, not just of her dance moves, but of the authenticity and passion she brought to each performance. They could see that this wasn't just about winning. It was about rediscovery, about embracing the unknown, and about proving that it's never too late to start something new. As the competition continued, Marla's confidence grew, and she started to see herself in a new light. No longer was she just the former wife of Donald Trump or a woman defined by her past. She was an individual, someone with her own dreams, her own passions, and her own story to tell. Her journey on Dancing with the Stars became not just about dancing. It was about rewriting her own narrative, about taking control of her own destiny. The show allowed her to show a side of herself that the public hadn't seen before, vulnerable, determined, and full of life. Marla wasn't just dancing for herself. She was dancing for every woman who had ever felt like they were too old, too stuck, or too lost to pursue something new. She was proving that no matter where you were in life, it was never too late to take a leap of faith and do something that scared you. By the time the season came to an end, Marla had achieved something far greater than any trophy or title. She had proven to herself and to the world that it was never too late to chase your dreams, to step into the unknown, and to reinvent yourself. Through her journey on Dancing with the Stars, she had rediscovered a part of herself that she hadn't even realized was missing. The show had given her the opportunity to challenge herself in a way that was far more meaningful than any career achievement. Marla had learned to let go of the past, to trust in herself, and to embrace the possibilities of the future. And in doing so, she had inspired countless others to do the same. As Marla Maples walked off the stage for the final time, her heart was full. She hadn't won the competition, but she had won something far more important: her own self-confidence, her belief in her own potential, and the realization that life, no matter how many years you've lived, is always full of opportunities for growth and transformation. And as she looked out at the audience, she realized that this wasn't the end of her journey. It was just the beginning. Marla Maples woke up the morning after her latest performance feeling a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. The competition on Dancing with the Stars was growing fiercer by the week, and although Marla had done well so far, she knew there was still a long way to go. The pressure of being in the spotlight again weighed heavily on her, and there were moments when she questioned whether she could continue pushing herself. The physical demands of the show were intense, and each week presented new challenges that tested her limits. But through all of it, there was something in her that refused to give up. She had started this journey to rediscover herself, and that drive, to prove to herself that she was more than just a public figure, kept her moving forward. During the weeks leading up to the competition, Marla had dedicated herself to the training. Her days were filled with rehearsals, and even after they wrapped up for the day, she would go over the steps in her head, visualizing every movement and imagining herself performing with grace. But this commitment came at a price. Marla had always been an active person, but this was different. The strain of hours upon hours of practice, the constant comparison to the other younger dancers, and the worry of being judged week after week began to take its toll. There were days when Marla felt overwhelmed, when she felt as though she was drowning in the expectations placed on her. In those moments, doubt would creep in, and she would wonder if she had made the right choice. Could she really keep up? Would the audience think she had what it took to stay in the game? But each time doubt crept into her mind, Marla took a step back and reminded herself why she was here. This wasn't about winning or losing. This was about proving to herself that she could still grow, still learn, and still live out her passions. It was about showing the world that she wasn't just a person defined by her past relationships, her public persona. They didn't define her. What mattered now was the woman she was becoming in this moment. She began to realize that the fear of failure was holding her back more than the actual physical challenges of the competition. If she could release that fear and focus solely on enjoying the experience, she would be able to reach her full potential. As Marla began to approach each practice with this new mindset, something shifted in her. She let go of the pressure she had placed on herself to be perfect. Instead of focusing on each misstep or flaw, she focused on the joy of dancing. Each movement became less about perfection and more about self-expression. She began to understand that the audience wasn't expecting her to be flawless. They were expecting her to give her best, to show up authentically, and to have fun. In fact, the judges, despite their critiques, noticed the shift in Marla's energy. She was more confident, more at ease in her own skin. They could see the joy radiating from her, and that joy was contagious to the audience as well. Each performance was a little bit better than the last, not because of her technical improvements, but because she had learned to embrace the process. By the time the next performance rolled around, Marla was ready. She had practiced tirelessly, but this time it wasn't about perfection. She didn't obsess over every step or every turn. Instead, she focused on how the music made her feel, how her body moved with the rhythm. When the music started, Marla's nerves were still there, but they were different. They didn't cripple her. They propelled her. She moved with the music, letting go of the past and allowing herself to be completely present in the moment. The first time, it wasn't about impressing the judges or the audience. It was about giving herself permission to enjoy the dance, to live in the moment, and to show up as her true self. The performance was far from perfect, but it was full of energy, emotion, and authenticity. And when the performance ended, Marla knew that she had done her best, and that was all that mattered. As the weeks passed, Marla's confidence grew. She no longer worried about what others thought of her performances. She had learned to focus on the joy of dancing, on the process rather than the end result. The feedback from the judges became less important to her, though she still took it seriously. Instead, she started to focus more on how dancing made her feel. With each new routine, she poured more of herself into the movement, expressing emotions that she hadn't been able to put into words. The more she danced, the more she realized how much she had been holding back in life. She had spent so much of her past trying to fit into roles that others had created for her. But now, she was finally stepping into her own, creating her own path and doing something just for herself. The pressure of the competition never fully went away, but Marla had found a way to navigate it. She didn't have the same doubts that had plagued her in the early weeks. Instead, she had learned to trust in herself, to believe in her ability to adapt, and to embrace the challenges as opportunities to grow. She wasn't just learning how to dance. She was learning how to be vulnerable, how to trust herself, and how to take risks. And in doing so, she was giving others permission to do the same. She wasn't just inspiring her fans with her performances on the dance floor. She was inspiring them with her authenticity, with her willingness to show up as her true self, no matter the obstacles in her way. By the time the finale arrived, Marla had accomplished something far more important than a win or a trophy. She had rediscovered a passion for performance, a passion for life, and a deep belief in her own ability to overcome any challenge. Her time on Dancing with the Stars had given her the chance to prove that it's never too late to take a leap, a faith to push past your fears, and to grow. Marla may not have walked away with the trophy, but she walked away with something far more valuable. A renewed sense of purpose, a new chapter in her life, and the confidence to keep pursuing her dreams no matter where they might take her. She had shown the world that it was never too late to start something new, and in doing so, she had become an inspiration to others who, like her, were ready to break free from the past and embrace the future. As the weeks went by, Marla Maples felt a growing sense of transformation within herself. Each day of practice brought new challenges, but it also brought growth. Her body had begun to adjust to the physical demands of the competition. The soreness from her earlier rehearsals had lessened, and she could feel her strength building with every routine. Yet it wasn't just her physical strength that was growing. It was her mental resilience, her inner determination, and her ability to face her fears head-on. She had entered Dancing with the Stars as a way to challenge herself. But the journey had become so much more. It was no longer just about winning or being praised. It was about self-discovery, about proving to herself that she could do something outside of her comfort zone, something that would stretch her limits and allow her to blossom in ways she hadn't imagined. One evening, as Marla looked at herself in the mirror after practice, she couldn't help but smile. She wasn't just a woman who had once been in the shadow of a famous relationship. She was a woman who had rediscovered a part of herself that she had long forgotten. Her body moved with more confidence, and her steps had become more fluid and natural. But it wasn't just the dancing that had changed her. It was the whole experience. The weeks of training had forced her to face her insecurities and break free from the limitations she had placed on herself. No longer did she care about the judgment of others. She had come to realize that the only person she needed to impress was herself. That realization was liberating. As she worked through the intense choreography for her next performance, Marla found herself beginning to enjoy the challenge of the routines. What had once felt like a daunting task now felt like an exciting adventure. The previous frustrations she had experienced, when the steps didn't come easily, when her mind and body seemed out of sync, had gradually faded into the background. Instead, she focused on the music, on the emotion that each movement was meant to convey. With each rehearsal, she learned how to let go of her perfectionist tendencies and allow herself to feel the music rather than overthink it. For Marla, it was a profound shift, a change in perspective that went beyond dancing. It was about letting go of expectations, about embracing imperfection, and about surrendering to the process of growth, no matter how difficult it might be. In the days leading up to her next performance, Marla felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. There was always a part of her that doubted whether she could live up to the expectations, her own and those of the judges and the audience. Yet there was something different this time. She didn't care as much about the outcome. The fear of failure had lost its grip on her. What mattered more than anything was how she felt when she danced, how the rhythm flowed through her, how she could lose herself in the moment and feel completely free. Marla had come to understand that the most powerful thing she could do was be herself, completely and authentically, without worrying about what anyone else thought. This realization had freed her from the pressure she had once placed on herself to be perfect, and in turn, it had made her a better dancer. When it was time for the performance, Marla stepped onto the stage with an energy that was palpable. She felt a nervous flutter in her stomach, but it was accompanied by a quiet confidence that had not been there in the beginning of the competition. The lights shone brightly, and the music began to play. Marla took her first step, and in that moment, everything else faded away. There was no crowd, no cameras, no judging panel. There was only the music, the rhythm, and her body moving in sync with it. She was no longer concerned about getting every step perfect. She was concerned with feeling the music, expressing the emotions it stirred within her, and allowing herself to dance freely. With each move, she felt more and more alive, more connected to herself than ever before. The audience could feel it too. There was a sense of freedom in her movements, a sense of joy that was contagious. When the performance ended, Marla stood tall, her heart racing from the adrenaline, but she knew she had done something special. She had danced with all of herself, body, mind, and soul. The judges applauded her, but it wasn't their praise that mattered to her this time. What mattered was that she had overcome her own doubts and fears. She had done something she once thought was impossible. She had let go of the need for perfection, and in doing so, had found something even more beautiful: authenticity. Marla's journey on Dancing with the Stars had become a symbol of resilience, of courage, and of the power of embracing one's true self. It was no longer about the competition or the score. It was about the joy of the process, the joy of growth, and the joy of rediscovering the parts of herself that had been waiting to come alive again. As the night wore on and Marla walked off the stage, she reflected on how far she had come. The woman who had once doubted herself, who had wondered if she could ever live up to the expectations placed on her, had become someone entirely new. She had transformed, not just as a dancer, but as a person. The fear of failure had been replaced with a deep sense of pride in what she had accomplished, and more importantly, in who she had become. There was still much to be done, still many performances, many more challenges ahead. But for the first time, Marla felt truly at peace with herself. The road ahead might be uncertain, but she was no longer afraid. She was ready for whatever came next. Marla Maples had never imagined that stepping onto the dance floor for Dancing with the Stars would become such a turning point in her life. The weeks had passed in a blur, and with each passing rehearsal, she found herself feeling more connected to the process, to the experience of rediscovering herself. What had once been a daunting challenge, something that caused her nerves to spiral, had become an opportunity for growth. And for the first time in years, she truly felt alive. She had always been in the spotlight in one way or another. First, as a model, then as the wife of Donald Trump, and now she was learning to navigate life on her own terms. With each new performance, she felt herself shedding layers of doubt and uncertainty, unveiling a woman who was stronger, more confident, and more comfortable in her own skin. But as the competition intensified, so did the pressure. Marla knew that Dancing with the Stars wasn't just about showcasing her dancing ability. It was about exposing herself emotionally, showing vulnerability on a stage where millions were watching. The scrutiny was intense, and there were moments when she wondered if she had made the right decision to participate. But as the audience cheered her on, as her fellow dancers offered their support, Marla realized that this experience wasn't just about dancing. It was about proving to herself that she could still rise to the occasion, still push past the fears that had held her back for so many years. The moment that had the greatest impact on Marla's transformation came one night after a particularly tough rehearsal. She had been struggling with one specific move. The timing and coordination of it just wasn't coming together. Her frustration reached a boiling point, and for a brief moment, she thought about walking away. But then, as she sat in the corner of the studio, catching her breath, something clicked. She had come this far, and there was no way she was going to quit now. Marla looked at herself in the mirror, saw the woman who had been through so much in her life, the ups and downs, the public scrutiny, the personal struggles, and she realized something crucial. She had the strength to keep going. The fear of failure, of judgment, had controlled her for too long. But now it was time to let go. With renewed determination, Marla went back to the floor. She asked her dance partner to break down the steps, to help her understand the rhythm and the flow of the dance. This time she didn't rush. She let herself feel the music, moving with it, not against it. For the first time in the competition, she wasn't focused on getting the steps perfect. Instead, she focused on feeling the movement, on expressing the emotions that the music brought out of her. That night, she felt a sense of liberation that she hadn't experienced in a long time. It wasn't just about the dance anymore. It was about reclaiming her confidence, about embracing the process of learning, of growing, and of accepting imperfection. Marla's next performance was a reflection of that new mindset. When she stepped onto the stage, she was no longer worried about how she would be perceived or whether her performance would be flawless. Instead, she danced with a freedom she hadn't allowed herself in years. The routine wasn't perfect, but it was full of passion, of energy, and of authenticity. The judges noticed the change in her. They saw the emotion in her movements, the way she had finally allowed herself to be vulnerable in front of the audience. Marla's performance was a reminder to everyone watching that growth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from pushing through the struggle, from embracing who you are, flaws and all. The audience erupted in applause, and for the first time in the competition, Marla felt a sense of accomplishment that wasn't tied to the score or the judges' critiques. She had shown herself, and in doing so, she had shown the world something much more important than dance steps. She had shown resilience, courage, and the ability to transform. Her journey on Dancing with the Stars had become about so much more than winning. It had become a story of self-empowerment, of reclaiming her voice and her confidence, and of learning to love herself again. The applause from the crowd was no longer just a validation of her performance. It was a celebration of her growth. As the competition came to an end, Marla looked back on everything she had accomplished. She hadn't won the trophy, but she had gained something far more valuable. She had rediscovered a passion for life, for movement, for self-expression. The journey had not been easy. There had been times when she wanted to quit, when the pressure felt like too much. But she had stuck with it. She had learned to embrace vulnerability, to let go of the need for perfection, and to trust in herself. And as she looked around at the other contestants, at the friendships she had built and the respect she had earned, Marla knew that this experience had been one of the most transformative of her life. Her journey didn't end on the stage. Lessons she had learned, the power of resilience, the importance of staying true to herself, had become the foundation for the next chapter in her life. Marla knew that the road ahead would still have its challenges, but she was no longer afraid of them. She had faced her fears and come out stronger. She had proven to herself that it was never too late to pursue something new, to take risks, and to step into the unknown. Her time on Dancing with the Stars had given her the courage to continue evolving, to keep growing, and to keep striving for the woman she wanted to be. And as the curtain fell on the competition, Marla Maples stood, taller than she had ever stood before, not as a contestant on a reality show, but as a woman who had found herself once again.